Okay. Should we see if this works?
It seems to be back.
Okay. You know what? 2020 is almost over.
Thank goodness. Because, when that
everything's
one
going to be
pops
perfect
up,
next year.
2021, everything's going to be magically better.
Yeah. It's all going to be good.
Oh,
okay.
my goodness.
So I'll just go ahead and wrap up on the Type
technology.
6.
If you're just joining, we had technical difficulties. Melanie did the most amazing Enneagram 6 teaching ever.
Yeah, it was. You should have seen it.
It was just the best. It wasn't awkward at all. But now she shall wrap up.
Yeah.
And if you want to catch it on our YouTube channel, it'll upload.
As far as we know.
Tomorrow. Maybe you got lost in ether. Who knows?
Okay. So I'm just going to wrap up quickly with the last couple bits. If you are a 6 or have a 6 that's close to you, a couple just practical things you can do to be a healthier 6.
Sum it up for us, babe.
To sum it up. So one is, and this is important, to be aware of your tendencies and how you relate to authority. So 6s can go either way. Either they can be like slavishly devoted to an authority figure.
Slavishly
devoted. Like they can do no wrong kind of thing. Or
to a political figure?
Could totally be to a political figure or a political party or an organization, or like really rebel just instinctively. And if you look like even just in the climate out there, like people that are like so loyal to any particular political figure, I won't even name any names, like that there could be no failings, or people that are attacking other political figures or the same political figure, and like they could do no right. So just be aware of how you are towards authority and just recognize that neither of those extremes are the most healthy posture, that everybody's flawed.
So this must be a really hard year for 6s.
It is the 6th year ever.
The 6th year ever.
Yeah. So we talked about that several Sundays ago, how it was such a 6th year.
Do we have any 6s out there?
Love you, 6s.
We love the 6s. So we're looking better already. Great. Cool. Yay.
Let's see. And then one other thing you all can do is, since 6s tend to be skeptical of compliments, and assume that people have if I get the word out, ulterior motives in giving compliments, to practice receiving them with grace and saying thank you, and not assuming that there's any ulterior motive, and just believing that you're worthy of that compliment because you're great.
That is interesting.
Yeah. And I think I will leave it there.
Cool. So, thanks, babe.
You bet. So love you, 6s. Next week we'll move on to Type 7.
Type 7s, or
the enthusiasts.
The enthusiast, yes. I love Type 7s. I need Type 7s in my life because
someone's got to cheer you up.
Someone's got to balance out the melancholy.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, son. Yeah. Well, I am going to pass the high-tech comment board off to Melanie. We get some of the comments on StreamYard. We get some of the comments on her phone, just to make it exciting. I'm going to take a 30-minute break so I can...
Not minutes, though.
Seconds.
Yeah.
Something like that. 30 spoinks.
Boink.
Yep. And set up something for myself, and then we'll get back on with round 2. So hang in there. 30 seconds. Go grab some popcorn. We're back. Oh, Lord. Help us, please. Technology.
Amen.
I love technology and I hate it. It's like the most love-hate relationship ever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, thank you, babe.
My pleasure.
Round 2. Welcome to the 7:30 to 8 block, which is Church on Wolf Mountain. We have been talking about dreams the last 2 episodes. This is round 3 and probably the last time I talk about dreams for a while. Just too big of a subject to discuss in 30 minutes normally. So I've had to break it up. And it's such a broad subject and a complicated subject, and there's a lot of teaching on dream interpretation out there, and such, and a lot of people doing an amazing job doing that. A lot of dream interpretation forums you can get on, which I think are kind of a free for all. You got to be careful on if you don't know what you're getting into, but they are very important. As we know, most every major player in the Bible God spoke to through dreams. He still does. It's one of the primary ways that I get information is through dreams, and they're accurate. So they're very important to me. So I thought I'd take a little different angle. Like, I remember the first session we talked about how to set up your life, the habits of your life, to be able to have a cleaner dream life, to be more receptive to dreams, allowing that time throughout the day to let your mind process so it doesn't process all night, and it just clears up space for you to receive more. I cannot remember what we talked about last week. Do you? Dreams of some kind. But I promised this week to talk about more of the stuff that doesn't necessarily get talked about, get avoided, because a mentor would call it a minor subject, and she'd tell me that you can't major in the minors. And I'd say, well, I think my major is the minors, all the weird stuff that people are afraid to talk about and can't find anyone to talk about, but they are spiritually sensitive and having experiences and wish somebody would talk about it. But a lot of people just don't have any answers because, like, frankly, not a lot of people experience the same thing. But there are a lot of spiritually sensitive people out there that are having different kinds of experiences at night, particularly if they are prophetically gifted or gifted in one of what the Christian world would call word of knowledge, discernment gifts, all that. Or they'd be called empathic, clairsentient, the clair gifts. They will have crazy experiences at night. But there's not always a lot of answers for in the church. So I love to talk about those because that's been an experience my whole life. I've had no choice but to deal with that stuff. And so I'm glad to talk about it because it's my reality. And that's where we're going to go.
Do it.
Anything to add to that?
No. Good.
All right. It's a big subject. So I'm not quite sure. Like, it's hard for me to know where to launch into this stuff. So I think I'm going to actually touch on two things. One of them reluctantly, I'm not going to talk about it much. And the other one, I'll go in a little more depth. The first one, why it's just such a hard subject to discuss because it freaks people out. But when your spirit actually leaves your body, which they would call spirit travel, unintentionally, that happens to more people than you would actually think, and it always freaks them the heck out. It happened to me in my younger years, and it wasn't fun. I thought I was literally coming apart at seams. And then later I met people that same thing had happened to. And so I think I just wanted to mention it in case anyone's ever had that happen, that there's nothing wrong with you. It's actually quite common. And there is the astral projection thing that freaks people out, which is an intentional practice to learn how to travel in the spirit. In the Christian church, it would be called bilocational, but it's not intentional. It's accidental or unintentional, where, the spirit science behind it at night is your body doesn't need to sleep. It's not necessarily attached to that time and space, and it can just go. And sometimes at night we have an experience like that wasn't a dream. I was actually somewhere. Or you'll find yourself floating out of your body in your room and looking down at yourself. And we hear about that in hospitals where people are on their deathbeds and they're in that space where their spirit's still active. It doesn't need the body. It doesn't need to sleep. It can go out and do stuff. And so sometimes it leaves. I'm not going to go into that any more depth than that, other than to say I often experience, I hear of people having this when they're going through what I call spiritual puberty. They're growing up, they realize they have gifts, all of a sudden they kind of wake up, and that often happens to them. They'll leave their body, and that freaks them out, and they, slam back into it. So I just mentioned that for people out there who have had it happen, to say you're not weird, you're not going crazy, it is a thing. And maybe someday we'll be able to talk about it more in depth. I don't feel super qualified to teach on that yet, but I will. So there's that. I'm glad I got that out of the way. So I'm like, I don't know, should I talk about this or not? Because if you haven't experienced it, it doesn't seem like a thing, but it's real. Okay, so then what I want to talk about then is, it's interesting that like no one talk about the dark stuff that happens at night. Like that, if you're in a Christian church, it'd be like demonic dreams or getting attacked. People always say getting attacked in your sleep. But it's kind of like ignored. But when it happens to somebody, it's something that they can't ignore. It's serious. It messes them up. It shakes them up. Like repetitive nightmares or experience at night, or they see something and like no one has answers for them. They'll go to the pastor. The pastor is often a lot of pastors. I've dealt with a lot of pastors. I've been doing this a long time, my friends. And I'm a prophet. I'm not a pastor, but pastors were like, really what comes down to is they're like, I don't really want to deal with this either. Like, I don't know what to do, because the subject hasn't really been, not all the pastors. Some pastors will go there. They're educated, but they'll often like, there's not a lot of answers there, but, I used to have people contact me all the time when something weird happened because they're like, this guy is not afraid to talk about weird stuff. Let's ask him what he thinks or if he'll come over or whatever. And so, I would find myself in the funniest conversations and I'd be like, I don't know. I've never experienced that, and, or and I'd be able to help them out. And so, Rachel says we went off back again after the break. Can you still see if we're still online? Somebody comment if you can still see we're online. Yeah. It looks like we are, but I think that's a little delayed. Anyway, we'll keep recording for YouTube's sake. So I want to talk a little bit about the dark dreams. Like Christianity would call it everything a demonic dream that's negative or scary. Dark energy, all that stuff. When you're experiencing something negative at night, it scares you, it's dark, you don't understand it, you're seeing stuff. And like people say, like, why does all that stuff always come at night? Well, it doesn't. It's always there. It's just the same thing I talked about with the dreams, that at night, our body in the daytime is like taking all the attention. It needs to be fed. It's got cravings, we're breathing air, we're doing the stuff, and our mind kind of gets in the way of hearing in the spirit. But at night, that stuff all kind of like goes on sleep mode, and our spirit's like bing awake and like picking up information. And a lot of times that information at night, for some of the darker stuff that's there, we're just able to see it. It's not like it's not there in the day. It's just doing its stuff, and we're not paying attention. That's the way the spirit realm is, because we haven't been taught to. So most of us lead with our bodies, our flesh. That's what's usually piloting, and not so much our spirit. But that's always the goal, is to be more spirit conscious than flesh conscious, or at least 50-50 would be nice, because it should all blend together and be one reality. So, so when we have like a negative experience at night, and I've had a ton, my friends, like on the first part of my youth, actually the later part into my 20s, into my 30s, even now, like I experienced a lot of stuff at night, not like I did when I was younger, but I've had to deal with a lot of that stuff for one reason or another. And but when you get a dark dream, negative dream, demonic dream, whatever you want to call it, you experience something at night that scares you. It is usually a lot of people think it's an attack. They'll always go there first. Oh, the enemy's attacking me. And that's kind of the catch-all phrase that's always thrown out in Christianity. For anything that bad happens, they blame it on the enemy. Like, oh, I'm sick. The enemy is attacking me. And it's like, no, your diet's terrible. You need to change your diet. It's like, it's like, this is happening to me. The enemy's attacking me. It's like, no, you have bad life choices. That's why this is happening in your life, or like my finances are terrible. The enemy's attacking my finances. Like, no, you're just not paying your bills and you're lazy. It's not the enemy, it's your habits. And the same thing at night, like if something negative happens in our dream world, the dreamscape, we're thinking, the enemy's attacking me. Well, it's not always necessarily the case. In fact, a lot of times it's not the case. That does happen. And when we say enemy for the non-Christianese people out there, they're talking about the demonic realm, the fallen angels that are in allegiance with Satan, warring against the kingdom of God, the fear-based spirits warring against the love-based spirits, fear-based kingdom warring against the love-based kingdom, you know. And that often actually is usually, when you're having those experiences, they are a symptom, not an attack. They're a symptom of something. And that's the thing I want people to remember. That's usually a symptom. And so we can actually, if we have experiences like that, the most important thing to do is to kind of lean into it. Actually, you want to get away from it, but sometimes we often actually need to lean into it. Like if you are experiencing a physical ailment in your body, like you're having a pain in your elbow, you don't just ignore it until your arm falls. Like it's gangrene and falls off. You're like, oh, I actually had a cut that needs stitches. You don't lean away from it. You pay attention to it, right? And like, why is my elbow hurting, you know? And it's the same thing in the spirit. Like, why am I having this experience in the spirit? I don't want anything to do with it. I just want to lean away from it. But sometimes we need to lean into it and find out why these things are taking place. And so it can be for many reasons. And oftentimes, the way I tell people to look at it, it's like, look, it's information. You're receiving information for a reason. And if you are a believer in Jesus, that you are a child of God, you have to trust that the Spirit, God's Spirit, is guiding your steps and letting you receive this information, so you will pay attention to the wound in your spirit and do something about it. And so, depending on the circumstance, why a lot of times we can have negative experiences in dreams. I'll just use stuff from my own life. Like I was having, I think then the year 1992, when we first got married. I know we've been married a long time. We were married when we were babies. I would have the same 3 nightmares all the time, every night for every day. Like, and I would get pinned to my bed at night, and it wasn't sleep paralysis, because that is a thing. It was actual spirit pinning me to my bed. I know it's scary for some people, but it's reality. Like the worst thing people ever told me when I was a kid, monsters aren't real. Well, they are real, because I was experiencing them a lot. It made me feel crazy, because people are trying to pretend like they didn't exist. So that's a very hard place to be when you're a young kid that's spiritually sensitive, when people are like, that's not real. And you're like, hell yeah, it is. It's in my room every night. Mm-hmm. And so that was a symptom of something, right? Like for some reason that was there doing that. And why was that allowed there? And so here's some of the checklists we can go through if we're having a negative experience at night. Whatever it is, negative dream, repeat dream, something comes in your house, you see something, and it shocks you and scares you. The first thing to do is realize that, like, okay, I'm receiving information. This is like a wound in the spirit. And it can be there for several reasons. So you go through the list. It can be an attachment. It can be something that you inherited from your family epigenetically in the spirit showing up. It can be residual energy in the house that you're in. Like it could be an actual event that took place where you're at. I know friends that have experienced like trauma when they go to a place. They'll drive through a thing and they'll see trauma that happened there in their spirit. Like they're experiencing it, feeling all the feels. And they found out later that like a bunch of people there was like a war there, and a bunch of people were slaughtered. Or like one time I was in a hotel and I was seeing first person view at night a father molesting a child. It was terrible, but I was picking up information that was trapped in that room. And since I'm a receiver, I was receiving it and it was playing back. It can be something that's resident where you're at, resident in where you're sleeping, in your house, in the neighborhood, in the region, in the state. You could be picking up something that's resident there. It can be because of an agreement you've made with something, like what are you into right now? What are you agreeing with that leans into that fear camp, the darkness camp? If you're in agreement with it, like that old vampire movie where they knock on the door and you have to invite them in or they can't come in, it actually is like that. The stuff can't come in unless you invite it, or it's there illegally and it's just easy to dismiss. But if you invited it, it's a guest. Your fears can be like a beacon that fear-based spirits feed off fear. It's what they try to manifest so they can live in that environment. Or there's actually some kind of an assignment directed at you from that realm, which is a whole other ball of wax, can of worms, whatever you want to call it. Ball of worms, can of wax. But for some reason, you got interesting in the spirit realm, and something is coming because they're like, we need to do something about this. And it's usually to scare you into submission. So those are all questions you can ask yourself to kind of diagnose like a doctor would, like what's going on in your life. Like doctors will ask you, you know, like what's going on in your life, especially if you have like digestive stuff. They're like, is this going on in your life? Is that going on in your life? Are you stressed out all the time? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating this? And then they would say, well, that's probably the reason then. Oh, you're not sleeping. Or like, oh, you've got a massive amount of stress. That's why your stomach is tore up. You know, and those things we can ask, like, is there anything going on in our life that would let this manifest, give this access to me at night? But it's really the spirit oftentimes talking to us, allowing us to receive information or causing something to present itself to us so we can see what's going on, and then we can take care of it. Because remember, the Holy Spirit guides us. God is in front of us, guiding our every steps, taking us from here to here, glory to glory all the time, and showing us the way to go, right? And so we've got to trust. I would say you have to trust the universe. And what I mean by that is people are like, you got to trust God. And I'm like, that is what I'm saying. Because the whole universe works together for the good of God's children, who we all are, right? And so everything wants us to succeed, except the fear-based demonic camp does not want us to succeed. What they want to use us for is more of a parasitic kind of relationship to take from us. And that's the main difference. So when you get the answer, then you can take the necessary steps to eradicate that from your life. So well, the good news is you have authority over your own space. And so you always have authority over your house, which is you. You are the house, the temple of the Spirit. You always have authority over this space. You don't always have authority over somebody else's space or the place you're in unless you've been given that authority by the Spirit. So you can control this space all the time. Like your own house, that's your space, right? Your physical house, that's your space to manage. And so when that stuff comes in and invades our space, it's just like an invader, like someone we don't want on our property, you know? It's like, you know, you have the authority to kick it off, you know? The trouble comes when that doesn't work. And so then we have more work to do. Like I moved to this piece of property and a whole bunch of stuff happened here before I got here. It's rooted in and it's holding on, and it's taking some time before that energy dissipates or that whatever that reality is in the spirit realm leaves. And that's when we got to press into God and say, like, this is what's going on. I need some answers. Trust that you're going to get those answers. And then oftentimes that's for you to actually learn something that you will gain power over in the future. So the next time it pops up, you're like, I've done this before. I know what to do. And it's more of that, like I've always talking about, we need to be able to form this communication line between the Spirit and us. And that's where we get all the answers. We sometimes look for them out here where it's really, you need to work on this relationship first, because that's where all the knowledge comes from. I want to touch on a thing I like to call playing with snakes. So I run across this all the time. Like people are having chaos in their life, disorder, like they're having a lot of dark stuff happen. They're attracting darkness, and they come to me for help. And I know that what's happening is they're allowing something in to their environment, but they don't want to, admit it. They're trying to hide it, or they want to play with it, but they don't want the consequences of it. But then you don't get to do that. Like it's like if you opened a box of cobras in your house and then went to bed and were surprised one of them was like staring in your face, ready to strike at night. You're like, I don't want cobras in my house that are going to bite me. It's like, well, don't bring a box of snakes in your house. Like, but I like to play with snakes. It's like, well, pick one. You know what I mean? Take your chances or get rid of the snakes. so that is something that you got to self-examine. Like, am I opening some kind of access point for this to interfere with my peace, interfere with the atmosphere of my house? I give a great example from my own life. So the spirit of death and comes to me in a bear form in dreams. I don't know why. It always has. Actually, I kind of do know why. But it shows up as a bear, Death the Destroyer, in my dreams. And I went through this season where I was having death come to me all the time and chase me around in my dreams. Really one of the only spirits I'm actually scared of in dreams. And it just would not leave me alone. And then one dream, I saw this very specific animal, an African maned wolf, which if you don't know what that is, there's no reason you would unless you're an animal geek. It's a very tall, red, long-limbed, looks like a wolf on stilts with a mane. And it came before death, and I knew it was a scout in this dream. And trust me, this time I'd ask the spirit, why is death always attacking me in my dreams? And then I had this dream, where in this dream, this red African maned wolf came before death came, and I knew in the dream it was a scout. Later, I found out that I put it together after I was prompted to do some research on wolf symbology in different cultures. That, oh man, I don't know how to condense the story. There is a Egyptian god. Remember, this was an African animal. Egypt is in Africa. Its name was Whipwawet. It's the earliest derivative of Anubis, okay? 3 long-limbed dogs that came from Egypt. And what this god did, Whipwawet, is it opened the ways for the dead to get to the living and the living to get the dead in that culture. It was like a god of the underworld, a gatekeeper, right? So it's opening things up for death to get to the living and the living to get to death. Well, I had bought a painting in Egypt of Anubis not too long before that because I thought it was beautiful and I wanted it, and I put it on my wall and framed it in a very prominent place in my house. And I later just got this feeling like I probably shouldn't have a god of the underworld hanging in my house. It just doesn't feel right, you know, even though it's beautiful and I can put it in perspective, just according to who I am, I think it's probably inappropriate. Well, what showed up in my dream, I put it together, is like I asked the spirit what was allowing this. Well, I had inadvertently opened a gate because I had made an agreement with the god of Whipwawet or Anubis, hung it in my house, and literally opened up a pathway for death to attack me in my dreams. As soon as I got rid of that painting, guess what? No more dreams about death attacking me. That is trippy, but it's legit. So I was told what it was because I asked the questions, but the answer came to me in a dream. It was something I gave access to. So I know it's probably like blowing people's paradigms, but this stuff's all legit. Another thing that can allow direct, actual attack in the dreams, or I'd say more like retaliation or putting in your place, is a lot of people want to pray about, they want to go after things in the spirit realm, like there's some kind of like Dirty Harry, and like they're just gonna clean house in the spirit realm wherever they're at, where they don't actually have the clearance or authority to do that. And so they're trying to sweep things out of the region or the area that they don't have a right to, and that thing's just going to come in and kick their butt. It's like, you don't have a right to do that. I'm here because of this. And they just are praying out of ignorance. And so it's really important to ask spirit how to pray and intercede into an area. So I guess since we're about ready to wrap it up here, and this is the last time I'm going to talk about dreams for a while, in the whole world of dreams, the dream life, I like to call it spiritual encounters at night, I just scratched the surface of the iceberg. There's so much more to it. I feel bad, actually. I gave such a kind of a shotgun approach to all the subjects. But the most important thing is you have to trust the spirit to guide you more than you trust evil to deceive you. You have to be able to, I learned early, because the spirit told me in a dream, I did not have to run from evil. And it switched something in me when I had like a dark experience, I would actually lean into it instead of away from it, like aggressively, knowing and confident that the Spirit was guiding me all the time, and I could trust the Spirit more than I had to fear darkness. And so it just shifted my paradigm completely. And so it allowed me to switch off that fight or flight mode reaction. When you see something scary running at you, this is a good lesson for anywhere in life, you know? Like when I'm surfing, if I get rolled out in giant surf and I start freaking out, all of a sudden I can't think, I can't swim, I can't move with the ocean, and I'd probably end up drowning. But I've learned in the most dangerous situations, like calm myself down and breathe slowly, and then like the fight or flight thing turns off and I can look around and think and react and process and get myself out of trouble. Same thing in the spirit realm. If we stop, you know, I don't like being startled still, but if I see something coming, it does not scare me. And we can get in that place, breathe, remember whose child we are, look what the information is being given to us, and then assess it and go from there, you know. And it just completely changes your relationship there. And fear fuels that kingdom, the fear-based spirit kingdom. It fuels it. They love it. Love attention. They love fuel. They're that fear fuel. And the difference between like coming with an angelic counter in a dream from the love-based camp and like a deceptive spirit from the other camp is God's messengers don't really like to attract attention to themselves. They only speak the message that the Holy Spirit's speaking them, God's speaking them. They never contradict the Bible unless they're contradicting your understanding of the Bible that's wrong. And they don't take from you, they improve you. The other realm will take from you in a parasitic relationship. So that is a lot. Crash course boot camp. How to deal with dark dreams 101. I hope that helps some people. Not enough people going there and talking about this stuff. I understand why, because there's wisdom in not giving that stuff attention, not talking about it. And we do need to focus what God's doing and what the devil's doing. We need to focus on good and love and that kingdom, because if you turn around and focus on the other one, there's not a lot of benefit in it, but we do need to also know our enemy as well. And sometimes situations pop up where people just don't have any answers because they pretended like it doesn't exist. And that's a shame, because there's the old adage like, oh, you're going to glorify them if you talk about that side. And like, no, I'm not. I'm not actually like praising the devil, right? I am knowing my enemy. I am knowing how that system works and educating myself so I can assess the wound and then take the proper measures to heal myself in the spirit and heal my atmosphere. So that was a little crazy. That was a little heavier subject. I will do that. You know, I'll talk about the things that people are afraid to talk about because, like I said, it's been my experience and I wish I had someone to help me through it. So that being said, we're sorry that was so clunky tonight. We had so many I'm having technical difficulties with the way I'm talking.
And sorry we couldn't see comments.
Difficulties, and we have not been able to see anybody's comments. I don't know.
We're not ignoring you.
Actually recorded to Facebook. I hope it did. It definitely is recording to YouTube. I hope. But yeah, we apologize. It happens sometimes, but you know what?
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? Roll with it. So, we love you. Have a Merry Christmas.
Yes.
And we will probably be back next week. Most certainly with Enneagram 7. And more of something else. So
it's going to be good.
It's going to be good. Bless you guys. Love you.
Love you.
Merry Christmas.
Be well.
Be well.